Hey guys, Big Weir, road2road.com with your morning horn of Z's, your sip of coffee. Um, Yesterday's Friday road trip has been posted for private road members. It deals with what I think is coming down the pike. And what is coming down the pike is that big thing that the U.S. government has not been able to pull off for 100 years. And that's the kicking out of the bad guys, the takedown, filing of charges against the criminals, which is a very important part. These crimes were committed and they just haven't been prosecuted because they wanted to keep the system intact. It was all about keeping the status quo going. And then there was a lot of people in Congress who have been compromised, who are part of the illegal maneuvers. So it would be a constitutional crisis, is what they like to call it. About a third of Congress would be removed. It's a big deal. And I think that's what Trump was alluding to. And I wrote about it in this week's road trip, but I did want to talk about this article from Mike Krieger of Liberty Blitzkrieg blog. Absolutely true what he's saying here. That the U.S. justice system must focus on elite criminality. And for way too long, the elite have been able to just pay fines and get away with crimes. J.P. Morgan, it's part of their business plan, is to commit crimes, make a lot of money, and pay a fine. A certain amount of fine is put aside for legal expenses, and basically it's to pay off the system that they make billions or trillions from, but they pay very little in fines. It might sound like, $20 billion might sound like a lot, but when you make $1 trillion, it's not that much. And that $1 trillion is, a lot of it's never reported and kind of hiding in the background. So anyway, a great article. I'm going to go over a couple things. This corrupt two-tiered justice system is something we've been focused on from the very beginning of my writings, and I continue to see it as a civilization-level threat to this country, if not aggressively addressed and confronted in the near future. Absolutely. It does, although it's been going on for over 100 years. And the reason it's allowed to go on is to keep the system going, keep the unbacked fiat monetary system going. Don't cause any bumps, nothing big. That's what happened in 2008. Something big almost happened. The whole system almost melted down. And they decided to just let it, cover it all up, let it go, print more money, don't put anybody in jail. Throw a couple fines at J.P. Morgan, which they ended up never paying, as this article points out. The two articles in question focus on different aspects of untouchable elite culture in America. The first relates to the continued fraud pervasive in America's largest financial institution, while the second covers a 30-year history of predatory sexual behavior by one of Hollywood's biggest moguls, Harvey Weinstein. In both cases, countless people have known and reported on repeated abuses perpetrated by both the institution and the man. Yet the U.S. justice system and the vast majority of elite culture happily helps shield them from justice. Predators are predators, and elite predators are far more dangerous to society than your average street crook. So why does our justice situation deal with it in the exact opposite way? It's to keep the system going. They are afraid that if the system falls apart, all the other crimes, the smaller crimes, will be exposed. And there's crimes all over the place that are covered up because the elite aren't getting busted. So why should the people right below them get busted who are going to rat them out? And when they do rat them out, they usually get disappeared, so to speak. So it continues. But a really interesting thing on J.P. Morgan, after they got fined for the mortgage debacle because of their criminality, they were supposed to pay a huge fine, and they ended up not paying it. And here's how it worked. And this was reported by The Nation, David Dayen. The article is entitled, How America's Biggest Bank Paid Its Fine for the 2008 Mortgage Crisis with Phony Mortgages. Unbelievable. A brief expert. J.P. Morgan's share of the settlement was $5.3 billion, but only $1.1 billion had to be paid in cash. The other $4.2 billion was to come in the form of financial relief for homeowners in danger of losing their homes to foreclosure. The settlement called for J.P. Morgan to reduce the amounts owed, modify the loan terms, and take other steps to help distressed Americans keep their homes. A separate 2013 settlement against the bank for deceiving mortgage investors included another $4 billion in consumer relief. A Nation, that was the name of the publication, investigation can now reveal how J.P. Morgan met part of its $8.2 billion settlement burden by using other people's money. Here's how the alleged scam worked. J.P. Morgan moved to forgive the mortgages of tens of thousands of homeowners. The feds, in turn, credited these canceled loans against the penalties due under the 2012 and 2013 settlements. But here's the rub. In many instances, J.P. Morgan was forgiving loans on properties that it no longer owned. The alleged fraud is described in internal J.P. Morgan documents, public records, testimony from homeowners and investors burned in the scam, and other evidence presented in a blockbuster lawsuit against J.P. Morgan, now being heard in the U.S. District Court of New York City. So, and it's very easy to do. J.P. Morgan doesn't hold most of the mortgages. They sell them off in mortgage-backed securities, but they still bill. So they already got their tithing out. They got their money up front. They sold off the mortgages. The mortgages were put into mortgage-backed securities and sent, pension funds and all that. And then the Fed bought it, most of them anyway. It goes on. It says, sounds hard to believe, but it's true. Not only that, but as we've come to expect from the rule of law in America, it somehow never applies to that group of people with the greatest ability to financially destroy people in their lives, bankers. For example, here's some more from the same piece. Federal appointees have been complicit in this as well. Emails show that the Office of Mortgage Settlement Oversight, charged by the government with ensuring the bank's compliance within the two federal settlements, gave J.P. Morgan the green light to mass forgive its loans. This served two purposes for the bank. It could take the settlement credit for forgiving the loans, and it could hide those loans, which J.P. Morgan had allegedly been handling improperly, from the settlement's testing regimes. No one in Washington seems to understand why Americans think that different rules apply to Wall Street and why they're so mad about it, says former Congressman Miller. This is why. Most of the loans that J.P. Morgan released and received settlement credit for were all but worthless. Homeowners had abandoned the homes years earlier, expecting J.P. Morgan to foreclose, only to give the bank forgive the loan after the fact. That forgiveness transferred responsibility for paying back taxes and making repairs to the homeowner. It was like a recurring horror story in which zombie foreclosures were resurrected from the dead to wreak havoc on people's financial lives. Federal officers knew about the problems and did nothing. 2014, the city of Milwaukee wrote Joseph Smith, the federal oversight monitor, alerting him that thousands of homeowners were engulfed in legal nightmares because of the confusion that banks had sown about who really owned their mortgages. In a deposition for the lawsuit against J.P. Morgan Chase, Smith admitted that he did not recall responding to the city of Milwaukee's letter. Few would expect Jeff Sessions' Justice Department to pursue such a case, but what this sorry episode most highlights is the pathetic disciplining of Wall Street during the Obama administration. J.P. Morgan's litany of acknowledged criminal abuses over the past decade reads like a rap sheet, extending well beyond mortgage fraud to encompass practically every part of the bank's business. But instead of holding J.P. Morgan's executives responsible for what looks like criminal racket, Obama's Justice Department negotiated weak settlement after weak settlement. Adding insult to injury, J.P. Morgan then wriggled out of paying its full penalties by using other people's money. When Maria Bartiromo comes on and says Jamie Dimon is the best business executive, business leader in the world, and throws praise on him, saying he's such a great guy, I'm so disgusted by either her total lack of understanding or ignorance, or she's just getting paid off by J.P. Morgan on the side because she's got this cushy little job. She should be one of those media people who should be hauled out in front of humanity and say, here was one of the biggest cheerleaders for one of the most criminal banks in the world. The larger lessons here command special attention in the Trump era. Negotiating weak settlements that don't force megabanks to even pay fines, much less put executives in prison, turns the concept of accountability into a mirthless farce. Telegraphing to executives that they will emerge unscathed after committing crimes not only invites further crimes, but it makes another financial crisis more likely. The widespread belief that the United States has a two-tiered system of justice, that the game is rigged for the rich and the powerful, also enabled the rise of Trump. We cannot expect Americans to trust a system that lets Wall Street fraudsters roam free while millions of hardworking taxpayers get the shaft. Now, here's how this all relates to the road to Ruta theory. In the road to Ruta theory, the idea is to run the unbacked fiat system as long and hard as possible, soaking up all the benefits of unbacked fiat money, always talking about paying off debts and balancing the budget, but never actually doing it. Run that system to infinity, crash the system, get rid of all the debt. Yes, electronic assets, debt-based assets will go away as well, but then we can start fresh. That was always the idea. Unbacked fiat money has never lasted this long. We went off the pseudo gold standard in 1971, and the only way it has lasted so long, the only reason it has lasted so long, is because the invention of computers and computer rigging models written by Alan Greenspan in the 1960s and 70s. That is the only way this non-gold standard is. You can call it an oil-based dollar, the petrodollar, because of the crimes behind the scenes with the Saudi Arabian oil cartels forcing the world to buy oil in U.S. dollars to create a false demand for dollars. But it's all done with computers and derivatives. Even the oil market, it's all computers and derivatives. It doesn't matter how much inventories go up or down, 100 times that amount trades in derivatives, so it's a derivative game. That's why JP Morgan, Bank of America, all those guys have hundreds of trillions, if not quadrillions, in derivative positions that they trade back and forth to rig the market up and down. Anywhere it needs to go, any market that is traded on an exchange, and they use derivatives. That's why the cryptos are doing so well. There's very few derivatives in the crypto world. They have to buy the real stuff so that they can dump the market and maintain some control, which they do. I would venture to say that JP Morgan is probably the largest player in the crypto exchanges. When Jamie Dimon says Bitcoin is a scam, he's just trying to defend his long-going scam of unbacked fiat money. But also in the road to Ruta theory, these people who have rigged the markets, committed crimes, are in Congress and have committed crimes, and are protecting the likes of JP Morgan. JP Morgan is an agent of the U.S. government. They argued that in the Blanchard lawsuit against gold manipulation. They said, you can't sue us because we're an agent of the U.S. government. And what else do you need, right? That's why it continues to go on. Do I think Trump will pull the plug? I do. I can't tell you what day, but a really interesting highlight is that the sheriff in Las Vegas is now saying there's a whole lot more to this than just some crazy lone gunman. And they don't want that out. I mean, it was clear that this guy was running guns for the FBI, if you ask me. He's been all over the world to all kinds of ports, including in the Middle East. He was claiming $5 million in video poker winnings a year. Well, is the casino in on it? Is that how he got paid off for all the gun running he was doing? He didn't need 30 guns in his room to pull off what was pulled off. Something else was going on, and the sheriff in Las Vegas is actually, I think they're going to get to the bottom of this. I think they're going to find out that there's people behind him. It was the same security company that ran the Orlando nightclub security that was in charge of this the hotel security. And it's a criminal organization, and I think it's starting to unravel. So I'm real excited when I hear that there's more research going into they're not just saying it's a lone gunman. It's the Kennedy assassination. The lone gunman. No, now the officials are saying there's a lot more that went on here, and it was obvious. To me, I said it practically instantly. I said, hey, there's more going on here. Yes, people do die in false flag attacks. False flag doesn't mean nobody dies. They murder people in false flag attacks. There's no doubt. But there's a bigger agenda behind it is what a false flag is. It was done, planned, and executed for a bigger agenda. Already there's bills in Congress to take away gun rights and things like that. I think it was much bigger than that, though. And I think they're getting busted for it. I really think so. I think that's what Trump meant when he said there's a storm coming. You guys got to be ready for it, and it's big. So that's your morning Horn of Z's. Nothing but good stuff. I do think that a lot of these guys, most of them, will face charges. If you commit a crime, you gotta do the time, my friend. And the people of the United States are not going to stand for another banker bailout. It's actually written into the Dodd-Frank law that the FDIC has to pay out all derivatives before they can pay out on checking accounts and savings accounts. So it is guaranteed that there will be no bailout this time. And no bailout means no more debt. Bravo, no more debt. No more electronic assets either in on the debt base debt based assets. Now the cryptos are not debt based; those are asset based assets, electronic assets. So it's a small distinction, but it's the most important. When there's no third party between you and your crypto, if you keep it offline in your own possession. Much longer discussion we'll have later. This is Big Weir, roadtoruta.com. If you want to give my report of what I think is going on right now with the Trump call for this storm coming, I posted it in the Friday road trip yesterday at roadtoruta.com. And you can join and get a free silver coin. So go check it out. This is Big Weir. I'll talk to you later.